Hello. Yeah, you hear me. So, hello everybody. Thanks a lot first to Callstack for the organization of this conference. Everything is great. Like, I'm sure, like, we see that you put a lot of time into it, and it's really appreciated. So, to start, I have one question for everybody. Who has been recently frustrated with an app that was not working well with limited connectivity, right? Yeah, okay. Thanks. I'm not the only one. Okay, a little bit quickly about me. So my name is Adrien Thiery. I'm French originally, but I work in Montreal, Canada. For the past 2 years, I've been there. I'm coming from a web background, and you're gonna see pretty fast, well, you see already that there's two things I really like in life, cats and GIFs, or GIFs, because we only have 30 minutes and I don't want to create a debate. At Ozidia, we're working, so we're a web and mobile shop. We're 22 right now. And we do as well React, React Native, a bit of Vue.js, and like Laravel, PHP, or Node in the backend. And we've been working with React Native since like mid-2015. So, well, we're pretty happy to have seen the community grow and like more and more awesome stuff that are happening right now. Right now, I think we have around 5 apps in production. One is hybrid, so yeah, so a lot of native because there's a lot of Bluetooth connections and messages, and we have 4 in development right now. So we're pretty busy with that. It's like we really switched from mostly web to most like. Right now, I think 70% mobile in the past year. So, and all that thanks to React Native because we're all web developers originally. Okay, so what are we gonna talk about in the next 25 minutes or so? First, we're gonna check like some good stuff, like some good UI and good behavior you would want to have in your application, but also some bad practices. Then we'll see a little bit some principles about what actually are offline first applications. And I'll show some code on how you can easily implement, and on the way we'll see some tools and packages that help a lot with that. So let's start with what you don't want in your application. So on my phone, I like to use Facebook Lite instead of Facebook because it requires less permissions, it's lighter, and it doesn't use as much data. But one thing that's really annoying in this app is almost every day, if I'm on Facebook in the metro, there are like between a few stops, I lose connectivity, and the app does that. So, okay, pops up in my face, you don't have data anymore. Okay, I know, like I'm in the metro, it's okay. So I press OK, but the problem is I just scroll 2 posts down and it re-pops in my face. That's super aggressive, and yeah, that frustrates me almost every time. So yeah, pop-ups, overlays, I don't think they're a good solution to like notify or tell your user that you're out of connectivity. Another thing that happens sometimes is that the app doesn't show anything anymore. This app, for example, even after getting data, like network connectivity back, just shows an infinite loader. And I couldn't even tell you which app it is because I don't remember, and there's no sign of what app it is. So show nothing is not a good solution, and maybe even worse, like show only errors. No, nobody wants that. Another use case that happened to me recently was, so this app Kijiji, it's a bit like Craigslist in Canada, so you can like buy stuff from other people or sell your old stuff. And when you open it being in airplane mode, so without data, it just forgets a bit everything about you. But it's been a year that I've used this app for a year, and like you don't remember who I am? Like, screw you, kind of. Um, yeah, so now let's look at some things you want to have in your app so it feels good. The first one is try to keep the user at home, like give him good points of references, well-known parts of your UI, so he's not lost. Like he knows what app he's in, and that's okay. And like you can still have a lot of things working even if you don't have connectivity. For example, that's the Airbnb apps. You see that like most of the time when you open the app as a traveler, you're gonna search for a place to stay for you and your friends. And so you still have this part of the UI. Of course, if you try to use it, it's not gonna work, right? But you know, like this green is the Airbnb app, you have the logo on the bottom, and you can even navigate in some of the parts of the app, right? So another thing you want to do is inform the user. So there are different ways to do that. And the best ones I find are the ones that are not too aggressive. So here, I think that's the Fabric app. And they show us a small message at the bottom saying, OK, well, we can't get data, so the app is kind of useless right now, but you can retry. And you still see, you still, like Airbnb, the Airbnb app, you know where you are. And so, OK, that's not too bad. Another very important point is to leave access to critical data. Eventbrite does that super well, because every time you get a ticket, like every time you open the app, I think, it gets your tickets, and you can have access to them anytime after that. And that's great, because let's say, for example, I go to Chain React, or I come here and I don't have any connectivity because it's not my country. I still have access to my ticket, and I can still come in the conference, right? Okay, and so another thing that you might want, like you surely want, is to adapt your layout. So you don't want to leave blank screens, even if the user can manage to understand why it's blank. I find LinkedIn is doing that pretty well. You have like a nice graphic explaining that it's cut out of the internet, and a small message explaining all that, and again, a retry button. I think the retry button in this case is good because it might be a loss of connectivity just for a moment, like just when the request to the feed has been done. So it can be good to give the users the opportunity to retry, right? Another question for you, who uses Trello and who uses the mobile app for Trello? Okay, quite a lot of people could. This app I found like really kind of amazing because even without connectivity, it acts as if nothing is wrong, basically. So you can still like go in your boards if you have loaded them before, I guess. You can still go in your cards, like check stuff as done in your checklist, and it's gonna do everything. Just like for you, you have done it, like it's optimistic UI, but it's gonna really do it after, and I think that's kind of the next level. And I think the new Facebook Android app does that as well. And that's, so act as if nothing is wrong, but then there's a pressure a little bit behind. It means that you have to deliver, right? So if you're doing a bunch of stuff in the Trello app, but then next time you're coming into the app like they've all been discarded, that's not a good experience. I felt cheated, and I won't be happy as a user. Okay, so let's look at some of the principles of offline-first apps. Google gives the definition of the principles for an offline-first app. So first, you should use local data whenever possible. So don't rely on your server all the time. Second, separate your UI from its data. That's a little bit what we talked about with Airbnb, and so you can still have your UI even without connectivity. then assume your app can be closed at any time. And that's especially true, I think, in our mobile app world, because you can be out of battery, you can have a crash, you can have, your phone can be out of memory or stuff like that. So your app can be closed for any reason. And test your app thoroughly. In these definitions, I have some extra ones that I think are really important. As many actions as possible should be doable offline. Like, you shouldn't block your user because you're like missing some of the resources for your app. Only block the minimum you can. Keep your data as long as you don't have the replacement. And that's, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's especially true for user data, right? The example of Kijiji, who forgets everything when you don't have connectivity, is not a good one. Adapt your UI to guide the user in the uncertainty. Because as connected as we are today, losing network is already frustrating or confusing, so at least let's keep our user safe and well in our applications. And then be optimistic, pessimistic. That's copyright for Yanni, because he wrote that in Redux Offline. And pragmatic. I'm going to explain these three a little bit after. So while preparing this talk, I tried to implement these principles in an application called Instameo. You can find it on the Play Store. It has been refused on the App Store because it's too simple and they don't see the point. That's kind of true, but. So yeah, the app is supposed to retrieve pictures from an API, or not if it doesn't have connectivity, and allowing you to upload several pictures of cat, of course, from your device, even if you don't have connectivity. Okay, so let's go a little bit on the dark side of things and check out the code. First, let's look at how you can easily adapt your UI. So there's a great package called React Native Offline that gives you a helper. So it's a higher order component. You wrap any of your component with that, and your component gets a property called isConnected. So it's a Boolean. Very, very easy. And you can super easily with that adapt your UI. So my example here is on the page to upload images. To validate, so you select your images, you open the picker, you select your images, and then to validate you want to upload them, you have a button. If I'm connected, I want to make my cat famous right now, right? I don't want to wait. Why would I wait? I have connectivity. But if I'm not connected, it makes sense that, like, I'm not going to say to my user, I'm going to upload them right now. That's not true. I would be lying to the user. So let's just make my cats famous ASAP. Another example here is my homepage. So here I'm offline, and I didn't ever load any data. So I have a side cat, right? Because he doesn't have any friends. So. If you're connected, then it should change and give me the opportunity to get some more pictures of cats, because I want that. So it's exactly the same principle. I just switch on the isConnected property. And and I have, but here, so what's important is that my user can't try to get some pictures if he doesn't have the connectivity, because I know like that's not possible, right? So now let's be optimistic. In that sense, I mean that like that's my example when I upload my pictures of cats, but I'm offline. I don't want to block the user or give him errors when I'm still in control of the situation, right? I know I don't have network, so my app will not try right now to upload the cats. That's why it's going to try as soon as possible. So in this case, request fulfillment is optional. First, I'm going to add the images locally. So I'm going to store them in my Redux. And then only I'm going to try to send them. And I don't, so as soon as I have them in Redux, I don't need to keep my user like stuck on that page. My user can go back on the home page automatically because he doesn't need to do anything anymore on that page. And we're going to show him that everything is okay, it's under control, it's going to go up to the server when we'll have connectivity back. Then let's be a bit pessimistic. So what I mean by that is you want to, it's again about my images, but also about my user. I want to always store everything that's supposed to go to the server locally first. So my first example here, I hope it's not too small for you, is that so when I open my app, I'm gonna set the user locally, and then I'm gonna try to update it or set it on the server. And same thing, for my images, I store them locally. So even if my request fails or if, and after only I'm trying to send my images. A really good things I found to make that easy is to use kind of transactions on my Redux actions. So here I have my 3 main actions for adding my images. The first one is that I'm going to add an image. So that's going to store it locally in my pending images. So I execute my intent is to add an image. Then if my request goes to the server and it comes back with a success, okay, perfect. So I remove my image from the pending images and I put it in the feed, right? Because it's been uploaded. Everything is nice. In the case where I try to upload it and I get an error back from my server, then okay, I'm going to handle it. I'm going to roll back. So I'm going to remove my image from the pending images, and I'm going to store it in a failed images part of my store, so I can give the user the opportunity to retry, like right now or later. Okay, let's still be pessimistic. Here, I'm going to talk a bit about the Google's principle about assume your app can be closed at any time. Another great package is Redux Persist. So Redux Persist is super easy to use. You just import the persist store method and wrap your store with it, and that's all. It's going to persist your store regularly every time it changes. So it's gonna store it locally in async storage by default. Well, you're gonna tell me that's useless if I don't get my data back, right? So it's also super easy to restore your Redux state. So you just add a middleware called auto rehydrate, and that's all. It's just gonna restore every time you launch your app. It's gonna restore everything it's stored locally. So that's super easy. Now, every time I do anything to my store, it's saved. And even if my app crashes, when I open it again, it's all back there. So I'm not going to lose my pending images of my cats. That's great. Even if I kill or I quit my app. Another thing that's great about Redux Persist is you have the choice of how you want to store that data. And it's really super easy. So by default, it's going to use async storage from React Native. But my personal favorite is to use Realm. So right now, I'm using it very simple as a key value store, like async storage. And I just had to create a super simple wrapper around Realm that uses the same interface that async storage. You can do the same, like if you're from the native development world, I think your favorite storage might be SQLite, so you just do your wrapper around React Native as SQLite storage. Or if you're really from a Node.js background, you can use MongoDB locally to And same thing, just a small wrapper that's doable in like 10 minutes or something. And you can use it with Redux Persist. It's, again, super easy. You just pass a configuration object to your Persist store, where you specify the storage you want to use. And here, I'm sure some of you will tell me that, okay, but in my store, in my Redux store, I have a lot of stuff. So I don't want to store everything. I just want to store the critical data, right? Or just my user or something. For that also, it's super easy. You can either blacklist some keys of your store, so the root keys in your Redux store, or you can just whitelist what you want to save. So I could just save my user if I want. Then be pragmatic. And what I mean by that is that if you know you're in a plain mode, why even try to send stuff to your server, right? It's just never going to go through. So React Native Offline comes to the rescue again with different parts here. So on the bottom right, I have the reducer that React Native Offline exports. So we find, again, our isConnected property, but we also have another item that's very important here. It's the action queue. And so if you connect that in your Redux store, you have access to the action queue. Another thing that's important is the network middleware. So you can create a network middleware that's going to work with your thunks or your actions. So basically, by adding metadata to your action or your thunk, you can tell the middleware to catch these actions, put them in the action queue, and only try to start to dispatch these actions when you know you have network connectivity. So when you're not in airplane mode or when you have your data that's activated. And that another aspect of that thing that's really great of that middleware and that system is that you can specify actions to cancel these queued messages, right? These queued actions or things. And that's awesome, because if I go back to my app, let's say I put 5 images to upload while I'm offline, and after a bit I say, oh, okay, but my cat is doing something even cuter, so I want to cancel some of these images and replace them by something. Well, that's as easy as dispatching an action. So here I'm just creating an action for each of my image, so a unique action. And if I dispatch that, my thing will just be dismissed from the action queue. So that's a great feature of React Native Offline. Okay, so what's missing in all that? Sadly, I'm coming from a web background, but I would love to see native queue consumption. What I mean by that is that if you want to reach Trello's level of interaction while being offline, your app should be able to use these actions while your app is in the background, or if you quit your app, right? That would be, yeah, that's something that's still open, but I would really like to add in React Native Offline. Another thing that I think might be important, anyway, in my case, I would like to have that, is that there's a difference between network access and connectivity to my server. So React Native Offline, again, gives you a parameter that's a ping server URL. So you can customize it to detect network changes based on your server URL. That makes some sense, because let's say if your server is down, okay, that's great, I have internet, but I can still not do anything in my app, right? So that's something I started to add also, and that's actually in Stemeo. That's what we do. We check the connectivity regularly to the server and not just the connectivity to the internet. And a package that I really wanted to talk about is Redux Offline, so done by Yanni. And I think it has a lot of potential. So the README is awesome. The concepts are really well explained of offline first and like doing optimistic or pessimistic optimistic UI or being optimistic and pessimistic, not block your user. But right now, it's not ready yet for production. Okay, so try, when you're doing your app in React Native, try to be optimistic with your UI, don't block your user. Try to be pessimistic on your requests, and pragmatic. Don't try to send requests if it's useless, if you know they're gonna fail. Try to adapt your UI to keep the user, show to your user that you're in control and that it's okay to not have connectivity. Your app is in control and everything is gonna be fine in this uncertain moment. Save your application state locally and often. So that's super easy with Redux Persist, but if you're not using Redux, you might have to do that by hand, but it's still fairly easy, right? And do it often. And then to finish, trust your device, not your connectivity. So one more thing I wanted to talk about is that at Ozidia, we really want to give back to the community. So we're launching today a program called React Native Need. The idea is that if you have missing components or big issues or complex issues that you're not able to fix, you can propose them on our website. And then the community, the idea is that the community votes for the one that are the most important, the one that the most people need. And then we'll dedicate time every week to work on these and, of course, publish them open source. So it's brand new, but Thank you. And the last little plug is that once you have a great app, just deploy it like a boss with Fastlane. And to know more about that, my colleague Philippe is going to talk about that a bit later at 4:30. Thank you.